Judging from how many people are here, I would say probably everyone thinks that accessibility is boring, right? I mean, I know accessibility is not a very, interesting subject as other talk, but glad that you are here because this means that you care about accessibility and you care about my talk, or just that I'm a good talk. Anyway, so just before we start, I want to show you a small demo. And this actually happened to me once upon a time, a long time ago when we still have, I think, Galaxy 2 or something. Anyway, so one day I opened my phone and I saw my screen like this. And guess what? What do you think that will happen here? The screen is, or the phone is dead, or? That's actually correct, the very dark mode, the super dark mode. Yep. It's a dark mode that turns on so you cannot really see anything. And what would you expect to see here? What would you expect things to happen here?
Version of color.
Thank you. But the phone will not allow you to do so. So I start to do, let's say if I'm on the laptop, I start to click on something.
1.31.19.
And then I hear something. You hear that? 1.31.19.
1.31.19.
What do you think it will be? That's the text. What do you think that this text belongs to? What kind of element here? What it stand for? Sorry? Yes, it's screen reader, but what the screen reader try to tell you about? And that's a possibility. However, it actually not telling you about a day. It actually telling you about an image. So the reason why, let's just turn it off. So if you can look at this, you can see that it's actually the image of a very nice image of a strawberry. The reason why it tells you the number string is because someone put an and text saying 1.31.19. For God's sake, who knows why? And that is accessibility. And by the way, do you think this one is, the application like this is accessible enough? Okay. Do you think Lighthouse will be able to detect this? Well, we can see, for God's sake. Okay, so let's just go to performing inside. Let's go to Lighthouse, and we do our small analyzing. What do you expect? 100%, 90%, 0%? Who says 0%? Raise your hand. Oh, no one. Oh, gosh, I saw you. 100%. This page, according to Lighthouse, is 100% accessible. But it's not accessible. We know that, right? And you know why? Because the alt text is not accessible enough. It doesn't give you a lot of content. And that's why today we're going to talk about accessibility in CSS. Yes. Well, disclaimer, it's not about CSS. It's not about JavaScript. It's accessibility. I forgot this. Anyway, in this talk, we're going to talk a bit about accessibility. What is accessibility? What are the challenges and solutions we currently found? And one of the challenges is what you saw just now. The site is, according to Lighthouse, is accessible, but according to the user like us, it's not accessible. And some tune and other things we need to keep in mind. So, before we go to definition, the boring definition like people used to think, let's take a recap. Accessibility lawsuits in the US only in 2021 have increased by 20%, up to 2,352 website lawsuits regarding accessibility, and mainly about consumption, retailing, and services. Guess what? These are very understandable because Corona, people stay at home, people do shopping online, and then people suddenly found out, okay, this is not accessible enough, so I'm going to sue them. And I always like to use this example in all my accessibility talk, because it's just so funny. In 2019, Beyonce company got sued for her website accessibility is not provide enough information to visual impaired people. He is blind user. And you can guess what the accessibility problem that she has? She has the same thing, like the demo I did before. The alt text here, it says 1.31.19. What it stands for, it's probably the day that it was uploaded, and then the person who wrote it probably say, okay, I will just take the data uploaded, put in alt text, because who God know what? Who care about alt text, right? And yes, you should care, because now she have to pay a lot of money for this, just a single text. And that's why we come to the next question. What exactly is accessibility in the web? I'm not talking about in general, because accessibility is everywhere. And here we're only talking about the web. There's a lot of good definition about accessibility, a lot of professional definition. For me, I cannot understand this professional high-level language, so I come down to more easy to understand. Accessibility in the web is mainly about how you see the application, the web content, how you can hear as the user what the web content deliver, audio, video, even the screen reader. And then based on this, how you understand how the web application works. And then you know how to use the web applications, the web content, the website, and use navigation. Navigation is not only touch, not only mouse, it's also about keyboard. Navigation. And this is the 4 main criteria. And I tried to make it a little bit like Microsoft Colors window, but I failed because it needs to be accessible. So, yeah. And with these 4 categories in the modern day, when we have a lot of smartphone, smart device innovations, it's become more and more complex, more and more important. So that suddenly we have tablet, different size, different resolution. We have laptop, and also laptop can be touch, can turn around, can do a lot of things. We have foldable phone. Anyone here have a foldable phone? Good. You make myself happy. Because I saw the foldable phone and I'm like, oh no, I need to support this screen size. I'm not there yet. Anyway, and also you have watch, and you also have a touchscreen on cars. That now the touchscreen, some application will not allow you to touch when you are driving. Let's say Spotify. You cannot key in anything when you are driving. You can only talk to it. Why? You're not supposed to talk. You're not supposed to text when you're driving. If you try to text, something wrong with you. You should stop driving. But, yep. And this, in order to make sure that we have some compliance with all the device and the accessibility, we need to have some, we need to have some standards here. What I mean by standard is actually the web content accessibility guidelines. Because all of this device, all of this hearing, seeing, understanding, and using are very, very complex. And different people have a different criteria. Some web application will be accessible enough for a person, but it's not accessible enough for the other person. And to unify that, the Web3C creator group come up with web content accessibility guideline. Web3C is the creator of internet, so yes, they can do anything they want. Anyway, and these guidelines contain about 12 to 13 different guidelines that based on 4 categories. It's also very similar to what we say about accessibility. First is perceivable, which means the web content that you're trying to deliver have to be perceivable to the user by one of their sense. What do you mean by one of the sense? We have 5 senses, right? Except for the 6th sense that no one really have it. We have 5 senses, but for the web content, how many senses can we use? We only have 2. If you count touch is another one, then 3, but yeah, 2. Seeing and hearing. So Either you need to make the web content is visible, or you make the web content to be hearable, audible. And second, operatable, which means the website, the web application, the web content need to be operatable by the user by any means. And understandable, meaning the user have to be able to understand what you're going to deliver. If they don't understand your website, they cannot use it. And robust are giving the user a lot of different ways to access the web content. And at the moment, you probably have a kind of idea that looks something familiar, right? This is actually also the same definition of user experience. For me, myself, I thought accessibility is user experience. Why? Because you are providing the experience to the user, making the website, making the web application accessible, meaning making the web application a very good experience for the user to interact with. And for that guidelines, we come up with 2.1. With 2.0 is good, but 2.1, because of all this technology development, such as a new audio and Flash audio and JavaScript, we have more and more rules need to keep up with. So we have web contents, assistive technologies like wide area, and they have guidelines for web technologies like Flash, video, audio, and of course they have to have guidelines for visual impaired. Visual impaired is not just about colorblind. It's about people with low vision. It's about people with photophobia that cannot see the high contrastivity, and so on. And this is actually not just about disabled people anymore. It's actually about you, every one of you. Every single one that using smartphone right now have some sort of disabled here. Any one of you still using the 100% font text in your phone? Or you kind of zoom in and zoom out, zoom in a bit whenever you open a website to look? This is disability. You cannot see it, but it's there. And cognitive disorder is very interesting because this is also experience, because it makes you have to make you comply that your web application has to be understandable and has to be usable by the user, which means your website has to be predictable and the content has to be concise and understandable, which means if you write some words like some English word correctly, but no one understands it until you do dictionary check, then it's not accessible. There's 3 levels of WCAG. It's A, AA, and AA, but we can't just delete the A because commonly nowadays, AA is the minimum. A is very low. AA should be the standard for international accessibility, where the government offices, regulation, everything will comply and will keep you away from the lawyer. Well, if you're not in the US, then it shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, so I generally whenever we talk about accessibility, based on all of these guidelines, at least you have 12 to 13 different guidelines to follow. Yes, accessibility is hard, according to several majority developers. Or some other people always escalate a bit more, saying accessibility in React is hard. Who agree? Raise your hand. Okay. Haha, I saw you. Well, I can tell you one thing. When you say something that is hard, it will become like a black box that you will never want to go there because it's hard. No one want to fix something is hard, right? How about it change it to accessibility in React is complex, which means it's solvable but just a little bit complex. This should be the approach, and this is what I'm going to tell you that today in this talk, that accessibility in React is not hard. It's complex, and again, it's also not in React solely. It happened to every single front-end framework. even Vue, even Angular, even anything that use semantic HTML still have the same problem with accessibility. In general, accessibility is complex, and that's also a reason why my talk is not solely about CSS, it's not about JavaScript, because JavaScript and CSS doesn't have anything to do with accessibility. Accessibility is something to do with developer, like each and every one of us. Yeah, it's not hard. So, let's go and talk about accessibility in component, with or without CSS and JS. Some of the major challenge we have in accessibility in component. First of all, semantic HTML tag. Yeah, we work with React, so React is not semantic HTML. So yeah, it's kind of challenge. But again, semantic HTML is HTML. You still need to write HTML in the end. Focus management, screen reader support, dynamic content, and magnification. I hate this word. Magnification support, magnifier. This is like zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so semantic HTML tag. How many people here ever use div everywhere in the application instead of using paragraph P or section or article? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. I'm not going to. Aha, good. God was there also. Div is like the anonymous user, which means no one sees it. No one can ever identify it. It's like a ghost user. And div, it will not be picked up by screen reader as proper as you wish. And that's why div shouldn't be used. And instead, you should use semantic HTML tag that stand for a specific region or landmark or heading. Heading is important because this is tell the screen reader what exactly the code structure you're going to have for your code. And also navigation controls like nav, anchor, button, input dialog. Another question, anyone here use button? Oops, sorry. Anyone here use anchor tag for button? Haha. It's not something bad, to be honest. I saw almost all the tutorial about React. People use anchor tag as the button. And I don't understand why, but I guess that's just a common user practice. Anyway, don't use it. Why? Because you can style CSS in every way you want using any framework, pure CSS or CSS and JavaScript library. But once the CSS is disabled, user will see the true naked HTML page. And guess what? This is what happened. On the right side, I have direction disorder, so I don't know where the left and where the right. Anyway, on this side, you can see everything is banned, and actually button is A, and everything is div. Also, button is actually a link. And this side is everything according to the requirement, the semantic tag. And without CSS, user can actually see that side and understand more or less how the page is structured and how to use. But on this side, you cannot because like click me, but it doesn't say anything. It's not a button. How am I going to click you? And screen reader will not be able to pick up this better than that. You can actually also do row, like put it here, row for A at the button, but why would you do so? Because it's give you more job. Keep it simple, stupid. And another thing, you probably also think, why would I care if CSS is disabled? Nowadays, no one wants to disable CSS. The internet is very fast, right? And basically, the page will load with CSS. There's no such thing. But there will be such thing. In some case, very rare, in 3Gs or internet doesn't work that well, you don't have the CSS file load, then it will not be there. And especially if you're using CSS in JS library, basically you combine CSS in JavaScript file. And to be able to render CSS, they have to download the JavaScript bundle file, parse the CSS, and then inject it to the style sheet of the browser document. And only then the browser can start painting And this whole process repeats every single time when the page is reload. There's no catch unless now they already have the catch. But this is what happened in 2019 also. And think about something happened in the middle, the JavaScript doesn't load correctly, something broken about the JavaScript, which means you end up with no JavaScript and you end up with no CSS. And your page, good luck to that. Okay, another one about semantic, why we need to use semantic HTML tag. For example, we have a content, a blog post with a picture on the side. We have some heading, we have some tag, we have some description, and we have some button. So the normal order, it will be the small tag, the big heading, and so on, and go the flow, like in the picture here. But the screen reader, the first thing the screen reader needs to tell the user is not the small tag. It doesn't say gluten-free or it doesn't say Mendes. It has to say gluten-free pan pizza with bigger name at the heading so that user understand what is this page about, what is this section about, which means you can use anything you want, you can write anything you want, but you need to keep the heading order structure from top to bottom. It will always pick the first one and read down from the structure, and also because it will keep the base structure readable and maintainable. And if you want to change the layout, use CSS. You can change the layout using CSS and JS by having a local state that will switch between from the route, from the list item row to a cart item row in the smaller screen, or so on. But it will still, the screen reader will still pick up from top to bottom, and the base structure will stay the same. Just the layout, how you user view it, will change according to what your CSS look like. Focus management. I hope I haven't time for demo. So about focus management is one of the very interesting part of accessibility because we need focus. For screen reader, screen reader and user that cannot use the mouse, they use tab up, tab to move forward, shift tab to move back, arrow key up and down, left and right to go between the menu. So the order of focus here will help the screen reader, the keyboard navigation, to know which one to jump, which one to focus when the page is low, for the first time. And also in the form, you need to know, okay, if I do tab from one input field, where would I land? Should I land to the next input field on the left side, or should I land the bottom input field on the bottom side? Autofocus. Well, we always like to use autofocus because it's autofocus, right? We don't need to think about what the focus is. But let's see what it shows us. And of course, navigation flow, like I said. All of these three are something about focus management that we need to take a look. And let's go on for the demo. So in the demo, I do focus. So this is the demo about focus management. And here I have a main input, which you can see the first time when it enters, it have input already it's already focused here. So let's see what I wrote in the back. So in the focus management, I have an input field, which is the component. And all I have to do, the input field itself already auto focus when it creates the first time. 1 second, I need to put it in this one here. Okay. Now the question is, what happens if I put another input field here? Which one will be focused? Question? Yes? Huh? You correct. I should have brought some unicorn that should give you. Anyway, yeah, so the second one we focus, even though we probably want the first one to be focused. Why? Because we put in a focus function trigger inside the component, and whichever render last will have this focus on. So the solution for this is instead of doing it inside the component, we turn the component into a forward ref. What the? Okay, and okay, and we move on of this outside, and the forward ref we will get a ref right here. So we don't control the state inside. We leave the state out control for the outsider. We go to the focus management. We get the same thing, and we do the input ref. We pass it to the first one. Okay, and now let's go back. So now it's focused correctly. Okay, what about autofocus? So autofocus is when you have the autofocus right here, and which means that it will autofocus when it's invisible in the first time, which means when I show input right here, it will autofocus inside when the component is visible. However, autofocus doesn't work the second time, which means if I do shift back and I click on it, it will not autofocus again. It's only work for the first time, so beware if you're using autofocus. If the component already rendered, it will not be autofocus again. So it's still better to use the dot focus. It works if you want to have some form that you want to autofocus on the first element of the form, like a dialog or something, then it's good. Okay, so that's the one of it. Navigation flow is actually a very sensitive thing because the navigation flow depends on the designer, depends how your website structure. Then this one, you need to work with designer because you need to think logically because there's no standard for it. Technically, to be able to handle focus management, need to think logic, need to work with designer, talk about the flow of the website, put yourself as the user, try to navigate using like the tab and shift tab, and up and down key, don't use the mouse, and see how your website responds. Using ref on the hooks, the DOM API, yes, you working with React, but the DOM API is always very powerful, especially focus. And this will help to make the component focus instead of use. And then you can combine with CSS to write some style for the focus state, but don't use hover, because your hover is the evil, because hover doesn't work unless you hover the mouse on it. Okay, so if you had on tab on touch screen, you will not be able to have hover at all. So beware. And if we want to have order of the component, like I say, use tab index order to have your component, your elements list out correctly. Screen reader support, this is fun. White area, how many people here find white area is good? It's easy to understand. Oh, no, no one, okay. White area is a very, very, very efficient in helping screen reader to talk. Screen reader is dumb. They're not smart. Don't ever think that screen reader is smart, because if they're smart, they wouldn't read 1.31.19 to the reader, because that's not what it's supposed to be. But yeah, if you're using white area, such as area label, to name a component, it would tell you that it will read according to what you name. Let's say here you have a button, say area label which say place order. It will say place order button. And if not, it will say place order. If you use place order button, it will say have double button, so don't use it. It will tell you the row of the element, and with the label and then the row of the element. So, in area label 5 by, a lot of people confused about it, including me. Area label is the text for navigating, and area label 5 is define which element which the ID that it will describe the label of that element. But area label is not usable for anything that is not navigation. So only input, dialog, button, anchor tab will be able to use it. Don't use it on a div, and don't use it on a span. It's not working. Okay, this one is also a thing. If you put a row status, this will not be picked up by screen reader. Instead, when it goes to item 2, the tag, it will say item 2, back count 6 status. So when you work at screen reader, this is all the things you need to know. Visible and understand label. Okay, I'm running out of time, so dynamic content using area live and area atomic, same thing. If you want to update, let's say update card, you need to put area atomic and live on there, and whenever you update a card, the screen reader will be able to pick up the update and element and say it. If not, then if you update a card, the screen reader will never tell the user if he adds something to the card and the card's updated. And it's 100% accessibility support if you work with lazy loading. And this one is more like about responsiveness using meta query and JavaScript calculations. This is important because 200% and 400% is very common use case now for anyone who use screen, like small screen. So you always have to design with responsiveness in mind. And color combination, don't use this color combination because it's not good. It's just color blind, people cannot see it. And these are some tools that today in the 4 p.m. talk, I think, there was Asap would talk more about this tool and how you can use it. And lastly, think accessibility first because it's important, and split the CSS code. And that's it. Thank you.